these rock spots don't change. When you come back up onto the structure, if there's fish using it, whether it be walleyes, smallmouth bass, muskies, the fish are using the exact same spot, and that's a really big deal.
Welcome to AnglingBuzz. Throughout North America, pretty much every lake, river, reservoir, stream has some form of rock in it. And that's what we're focusing on today, fishing around rocks. Just about every game fish intermittently uses rocks at some time. It's a key habitat for walleye, largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, musky, catfish, and even crappies and bluegill. Throughout the year, fish, they move around a lot and use various types of cover like weeds, wood, and rock, depending on the individual lake, river, or reservoir you happen to be fishing. Rocks are not only great to form edges that fish can relate to, but they're also important for prey fish species like crayfish, bugs, shiners, and perch. A big part of being a good rock angler is understanding different presentation tactics you can use over these rock bottom areas. Today's guest is my cousin, James Lindner. He's going to share his advice into the subject matter. So James, what are some key things people should be thinking about when it comes to rock fishing?
If I had to tell you what some of the most important aspects of becoming a better rock fisherman, I'd have to say it would have to be utilization of side imagery to identify the best spots on a rock pile. Seasonally, throughout the entire year, smallmouth, walleyes, northern pike, muskies, all different fish use rocks. And each rock pile is laid out differently. So what I do is use a lot of side imagery and dropping waypoints on my map to identify the best individual spots on that rock pile. And you'll say, well, what are those? And well, it could be something as simple, a couple of really big boulders on a point. It could be a spot where the inside corner and you have the absolute sharpest drop cupped into a reef system. It could be the transition from the hard rock spine to sand at the base of it. So when you look at my map here, you can see this is just one rock hump. And I literally have dozens and dozens of waypoints on it. And I've collected these over the year. The interesting thing is when you look at rock spots versus weed spots, because weed spots can change. Weed growth changes every year, and you come back to a weed spot, a lot of times it changes pretty dynamically. Rocks do not, you know what I mean? So they're good spots year after year, and that's really super critical.
And if you had to identify a great rock spot, what would it look like?
Well, that really would depend on the individual lake I happen to be fishing, because based on the rock structure. And certain lakes obviously have a far and away a lot more rock composition. The fish relate to it more. On some lakes you only have limited amount of rock. But the one thing I would say, if some of the best rock spots that I know of, I have one pulled up right here on the map, is what it is, it's multi-layered or multi-tiered. You actually have shallow rocks up in the 4 to 5 foot level, dropping out into the 8 to 10 foot level, and then down in the 15 to 20, 25 foot level that actually ultimately the end rocks dump into the deeper basin or softer bottoms in the lake. And why that is important is those types of spots are used seasonally, spring, summer, and fall. One rock spot can actually hold fish the entire year. The other thing that's really sort of super interesting, many of the best rock spots are used by different fish species throughout the course of the year. For example, on this particular spot, the shallow rock spine up on top is used by walleyes early season. As those walleyes drop off, as the water gets warmer, those walleyes start dumping off those shallow rock spots. Smallmouth bass come up and use these exact same spots.
Here's one.
Later in the year, muskies will use these exact same spots.
Beautiful fish though. Look at that.
Nice one.
So what I'm saying is that's why it's so important to maintain your coordinates and utilize. Coordinates are free, they're cheap, you can save them really easy. The biggest thing is these rock spots don't change. And that's what's really critical. When you come back up onto the structure, if there's fish using it, whether it be walleyes, smallmouth bass, muskies, the fish are using the exact same spot. And that's a really big deal.
Well, that's a ton of great information. Appreciate it, James. We'll see you out there on the water, of course. And stay with us after the short break. We have more Angling Buzz. In this next segment, we're joined by Jeremy Smith. He's going to share a few musky baits when it comes to rock fishing.
As rocks become one of the dominant locations to find muskies later in the season, really any presentation can be effective, whether it's bucktails or topwater, rubber, jerk baits, crank baits, but there are really three presentations that I rely on heavily. The first is, of course, my favorite of all time, and I think it's maybe muskie's favorite food, and that is the inline spinner, or commonly referred to as the bucktail. So especially when fish are hot or the fish are on the crowns or the top of any rock structure, this is when blades really shine. They're efficient, you can cast and reel them quickly. They perform exceptionally well at the boat, so this is a bait that you're gonna get a lot of your boat side strikes on, and it just happens to be a really, really productive lure. So, you know, I would almost never later in the season not have an angler throwing a bucktail if you can. You don't always get the most follows with the bucktail, but when they bite it, you can usually hold on to them and get them in the net. So absolutely extremely efficient. And then secondly, a presentation that really is, you know, one of course, the most dominant categories of lures in just about any type of fishing, especially muskies, is plastics. So plastics are extremely versatile, they're often lifelike, and they can be fished in a number of different ways. Why I like fishing rubber, and particularly a tube in this case on rock structures, is it gives me a lot of versatility. So I can do things with the bait to elicit a strike, so I can make it move erratically, but I feel most importantly is I can control the depth. So I could throw this tube out on top of a 3 or 4 foot rock pile, have the rod working at a high angle, and as that structure starts to taper into the basin, I can let the bait fall and start to work closer to the bottom. So if the fish aren't up and they're not really hot, I can get a piece of rubber in front of a fish when they're further off the ledge. So having rubber in the boat is a really key tool, especially for depth control, because muskies are not always on the crowns of the rock structure. Oftentimes they're sitting kind of midway down, or even at times on the base. So those would be two of, you know, absolutely the go-tos. And then the last one that I feel gets overlooked by a lot of muskie anglers, and I still feel has incredible value, is the crankbait. And I rely on the crankbait a lot of times. Conditions like this, when it's high skies, calm, sunny, a lot of times the muskies aren't really in a great mood, and they're often laying near the bottom. And the crankbait ricocheting off of rocks or making contact with cover is an amazing triggering element to this bait. So whether you're fishing bass or walleyes or whatever, you know, if you can make contact with cover, a lot of times you can get a fish to react to it. So I fish crankbaits on rocks all the time, especially if I can drive the crankbait into the rocks and bang it around and work it off the rocks, and a lot of times they just come up and powder this bait. It's another bait that you can get a little bit deeper in the water column, and when the fish aren't super hot, getting down near their face seems like it's a really, really great way to put muskies in the boat when they're not willing to come up on top. So, of course, you never know. Anytime you hit the water, you have to experiment, but with these three presentations, I would feel very confident that if I'm fishing muskies on the rocks, we are gonna have a really good chance of putting some fish in the boat.
Having a better understanding of the baits and structure are very important when it comes to muskie during the summertime all the way into fall. And speaking of muskie and other game fish, right now we're heading to North Dakota.
The best way we're gonna keep doing is just slipping like this and pounding that edge.
There we go, I got one. We're just drifting this weed line. I just cast it straight down the weed line. I think they're right on the edge of it. Ooh, there's a nice, that's a good one, that's a good one. Come here, baby, come here.
They're certainly the right fish.
Beautiful fish, healthy fish. Healthy, they're just feeding on forage right along, they're sticking in the weeds. I think they're ducking their head in the weeds and coming back out, finding this forage base in the lake. North Dakota, well known for walleyes. That's what we're doing this week. We're gonna come out here for a couple days and catch a bunch of these nice walleyes and fishing that 6 to 8 feet of water, weed line walleyes. with jigs and plastics, just like that. Catch those.
Oh, I got one too. I got one too.
Nice.
I got a spot lock here. Big fish again. She coming your way.
All right, whoa, that's a nice
Swing her here. But when you get bit, it's a good one.
Welcome to North Dakota, where every cast is a new adventure waiting to happen.
North Dakota crappies. Who would have thought? You know, I've seen big crappies out here, but these are magnums. And look what they're biting. You usually think crappies, small baits. Well, look at the size of that mouth when you're talking. That's got to be pushing 15 inches.
Whether you're a seasoned angler or just starting out, North Dakota offers some unique opportunities and some of the best fishing experiences in the Midwest. From tranquil glacial lakes to the upper Missouri River system loaded with walleye, pike, smallmouth bass, and perch, there's a fishing spot here for everyone. And North Dakota isn't just about fishing. It's about embracing the rich culture and amazing tourism destinations. Explore the rugged beauty of Theodore Roosevelt National Park or venture into hidden gems like the North Dakota Dinosaur Tour. For those seeking thrills, the trails are perfect for hiking, biking, and horseback riding, while the rivers and lakes are ideal for kayaking and boating. Plan your adventure today and discover why North Dakota is the ultimate destination for fishing, exploration, and relaxation.
This week in our Blackfish giveaways, we're featuring the Fortis TD 195 landing net. Now this net is awesome. It's built with military grade aluminum. It's got a quick extended handle, built-in ruler. It's got a rubber coated meshing to protect the fish's slime coat, and it's great for walleye, pike, bass, and trout. Now you can win this net if you head to AnglingBuzz.com and click on our giveaways, or scan the QR code below.
And now it's time for our cool product. We're going to start out with the DT series from Rapala. DT simply means dives to. So a DT8, this dives to 8 feet. And the baits that I have up here are DT4 up to a DT10, which is perfect for summertime bass fishing. They are offered in sizes that go deeper, which can be very good for fall fishing, but since we're talking about summertime, these are perfect. There's some great color patterns, more bait fish colors and some brighter colors. This is a tried and tested crankbait series from Rapala. I use these a lot. DT series from Rapala. And next, Bugs Be Gone from Seafoam. Well, the bugs, they're out in full force, and this is a fantastic product. This works great to remove dried on bugs, organic crud, as well as bird poop, algae, mildew, brake dust, and road grime. You just spray it on, wait a couple minutes, and wipe it off. Bugs Be Gone from Seafoam. And next, a couple options for trolling from Northland Tackle. This is the snagless rock runner from Northland Tackle. This is great for pulling rigs like the butterfly blade float and harness. And this has a float on there, so it's going to keep your bait elevated off the bottom. This is a lot less snags. You're going to keep it off the rocks. You're going to keep it off the weeds. Has some great color patterns on here, a lot of great blade and float combinations to attract walleye to bite. The snagless rock runner comes in different sizes. This happens to be a 1/2 ounce, and you can see some of these brighter attractor weights on here. This is the Wonder Bread pattern. This is great pretty much all season long, but especially summer into fall when walleyes go out on rock piles. Northland Tackle offers a variety of different rigs for walleye fishing with bottom bouncers, and this is a great option this time of year, the butterfly blade float and harness. You have a lot invested in your marine electronics. Keep them protected with Balls Out mounts. This happens to be their 4-inch mount, and Balls Out offers a variety of different color options. These are made in the USA with a lifetime warranty and aircraft-grade aluminum. These are extremely strong, extremely durable to keep your electronics protected. Balls Out mounts fit just about every marine electronics manufacturer. And now it's time for our Technique of the Week.
Northland Tackle Pro Staff Glenn Walker, talking today about the Elite Series Finesse football jig. This Finesse football jig is, in my mind, two types of jigs. It's a football jig, but also a Ned head. Most people think of as a football head jig as a deep water, offshore, heavyweight situation. You know, throwing a ½ ounce, 3/4 ounce, even a 1 ounce football jig. With the Finesse football jig, this jig comes in 4 sizes, 3/16, 1/4, 5/16, and 3/8, 4 colors, brown, green pumpkin, black, and black blue. To me, the Finesse football jig is a great way to combine that football head jig presentation of the bait prong along the bottom along with the Ned head. As you can see, it's very compact, short shank hook, so you can use a small Finesse plastic. You can drag this jig on offshore rock, sand, gravel, or if you want, you can still make those casts that offshore weed line like you would your traditional Elite Series Netster jig and have it fall down the face of the vegetation and rip it out. My favorite way to dress this jig is with a Zoom Ultra Vibe Speed Craw. What I'll do is I'll take my scissors, trim about 1 inch off of that speed craw, thread it up, the shank of that Elite Series football jig, light it up, and there you go. Just a really small, compact, craw imitating Finesse football jig that I can make a super long cast with and keep this bait on the bottom. That's the biggest thing with this, is if you're dragging this jig, use the biggest weight you can, or the lightest weight you can get away with to maintain bottom contact. So this summer, when you're fishing offshore structure and the bite gets tough, grab some of the Northland Tackle Elite Series Finesse football jigs, and I think you're gonna catch a lot more bass.
Rock piles can hold a lot of smallmouth bass, and finessing them with small baits, small jigs, small football head jigs can really work well late summer all the way into fall. And we can all help stop the spread of aquatic invasive species anytime you're leaving any body of water clean, drain, dry. And be sure to visit us online at AnglingBuzz.com. We have more guide reports, in-depth videos, blogs, and a lot more. And you can follow us across our social medias. It's simply AnglingBuzz, YouTube, of course, as well as Instagram and Facebook. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.